Is it just me, or did the first half of this episode felt like you were watching a creepy Studio Ghibli film? Hey, what's going on everyone? So today we're going to be breaking down and analyzing the first episode of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. While breakdowns naturally involve a bit of recap, this one is going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to do recap, but instead I'm going to try to focus more on pointing out specific details I found really interesting about the episode, whether it's from a particular scene, the depiction of characters, the animation, the direction, potential foreshadowing, etc. While I won't bring up spoilers from the manga, so this is safe for anime only, I will mention changes that the episode had differed from the source material. For example, some scenes were either extended or slightly altered in the anime, but yeah, with all the precautions set, let's get straight into this breakdown. So first and foremost, this episode was directed and storyboarded by Shota Gushizono. If you're not so much into the animation sphere, I'll just simply say that Goso has a very creative vision. I'll bring up some specific shots that were likely storyboarded by Goso as we go through this episode, but the first 90 seconds starts with a monologue of Geto seemingly getting fed up by the world of sorcery around him. Obviously, we saw from the movie that Geto is supposedly a villain, so knowing that he was once friends with Gojo and everyone else at Jujutsu High indicates that there had to be a turning point in his life, and this scene definitely hints towards that impending pathway. I love the dark and grim approach that Mappa went for. The ground, the people, the alleyway, all of the environment in this scene are tainted with a shade of gray. Like, it has a colorless presentation, which I think perfectly conveys Geto's current feelings, specifically in this moment, as all the vibrancy and the colors seem to have been drained from his perception of the world. Based on the monochrome atmosphere and the way he speaks, we can tell that Geto's worldview has become bleak, devoid of joy and optimism. However, the only color Geto sees in this sequence is the bright blue orb that he uses to consume curses. This can highlight the significance of curses in Geto's life, as maybe they hold a twisted allure and may serve as a substitute for the emotions that have been torn from his existence. I won't speak too much on it as it does dive deep into manga spoilers, but once this arc finishes in the anime, you can let me know in the comments if you want to see an analysis video regarding Geto's character, because I do think he's one of the more interesting ones, not only in this arc specifically, but in the entire series. Moving on to the Haunted Mansion exploration, like I said earlier, it really felt like I was watching a Studio Ghibli film here, or just some other anime that's not shonen, in a good way of course, as while the art style has become more simplified compared to season 1, the layouts here are still very strong, kind of similar to Chainsaw Man, where even in the simplest scenes, if it's like two characters talking, the compositing, the perspective, the overall visual design just has a more cinematic feel to it. Season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen did have some of that, but only within its action sequences, whereas here in season 2, it seems like the strong layouts will be consistently shown even in the most basic scenes. But one thing that probably interested me the most, again similar to some scenes in Chainsaw Man, was the super fluid walk cycles, the smooth tracking camera shots moving along their footsteps. It adds a realistic immersive appeal and complements the tension that this haunted house is supposed to make you feel, or how it makes Utahime feel. I could be wrong, but it seems like there was some rotoscoping used, or if it was pure animation, then that's even more insane, because yeah, that entire sequence of Utahime being scared by the rats and then Mei surprising her from behind, her movement was super fluid and realistic, maybe too realistic, as it did kind of throw me off. Although if there had to be a single nitpick from this episode, it's probably that 3-second shot with Utahime. Again, that's me being very nitpicky, the rest is obviously phenomenal. The mansion itself seemed to be 3D, maybe mixed with some 2D drawings, but again, a very strong layout with rough grainy textures perfectly nails the creepy aesthetic of this mansion. Some fisheye shots were obviously used, which should immediately tell you that this is a Goso directed episode. We'll see more of those fisheye lens later, as the best part of this entire mansion sequence was when they got out via Gojo's blue, when Utahime started running to outmaneuver the cursed spirit's barrier duplication and the details on the corridor started to disappear. That's when the animation went full on Sakuga, something that I've talked about in my PV analysis video, where less detail will create that more fluid animation, and that's something we can expect to see for fight scenes in season 2. Now thinking about it, this kind of reminds me of a similar shot from Ranking of Kings, which Goso may have directed on the specific episode as well, though don't quote me on that. Now in the next quick shot of Gojo putting his foot down, you can see his smears, which usually if it's not used in a fight scene, then it would be used to highlight a very important scene, but here it's just kind of casual. Actually, I guess it's the very first appearance of Teen Gojo, so it's kind of important, but I mean, yeah, those smears and along with the simpler character design, it's definitely an indication that we're gonna get a lot of Sakuga this season. But after that, we get the first season's opening, which I'm gonna make a separate video on, but I'll just briefly say right now that I think it's really cool to have an individual opening for each arc. For anime onlys, this Gojo Past arc won't be the entire season. I won't specifically say how many episodes because I feel like that might be an expectational type spoiler, but yeah, it's just not gonna run the entire season. Anyways, one thing I was really looking forward to was seeing how the cursed spirits would look like in this new art style, and they still look pretty good, detailed, and grotesque, just like in season 1. I'd say maybe even more polished. I'm really glad it's kept that way because the cursed spirits are kind of like the monsters in this show, so there has to be a discrepancy in the art between the humans and curses. Also, love the humor they implemented into their animation. I'm not sure if there's an exact word or term for it, maybe visual comedy, but yeah, while the entire group was still talking, Geto was slowly walking his way up to the surface, and he's still in his chibi form. There's like cartoonish sound effects coming from his steps, plus this goofy scene with Yaga scolding Gojo, Geto, and Shoko. Honestly, you get more appreciation from Teen Gojo knowing that he actually allows Yaga to hit him in the head, because remember, his infinity can easily protect himself from getting hit by Yaga, but Gojo just lets it pass through because he knows he's being scolded by his teacher, and I believe we saw this same thing in season 1. So yeah, it just shows so much class and respect that Gojo has to being Yaga's student. Then we move on to an extended plus altered scene where Gojo and Geto are playing basketball. This doesn't happen in the manga, although the context of their dialogue does, where Gojo and Geto pretty much argue on what it means to be a proper sorcerer. It's interesting because what Geto preaches here is the very opposite of how he turns out in the movie, but I really like the change of scenery playing basketball in a school gymnasium. It adds a nice slice of life element, which was presumably intentional, you know, considering they're in high school. Also, the detail to make Gojo land a crazy one-handed shot while Geto misses a jumper off the rim, that's gotta be intentional, right? Signifying that Gojo is more quote-unquote perfect, as in, you know, being born with both the six eyes and the limitless, being the strongest, etc. Whereas Geto, he's not quite there yet on Gojo's level, and there's more emphasis or flair in that sentiment when the shot by Gojo just whiffs Geto's bangs. I don't know, maybe I'm overstepping there, but when they get called out by Yaga, this shot reminds us just how tall both students are. I mean, their heads almost reach the roof of the catwalk. They're probably like 6'4" or something, though Yaga calls them out to inform them about a mission from Master Tengen where they need to safely escort a girl who's matched as the perfect star plasma vessel and merge her with Tengen to reset his evolution curse technique. This scene also has some good shots, like what's the point of seeing Geto talk through the perspective of a stacked chair? Goso will do the most things to make chill scenes look more visually appealing to keep the viewers engaged, and yeah, that's just something I really appreciate about his work. However, continuing on to the last portion of the episode, we get to see Gojo and Geto encounter one of the groups assassinating the star plasma vessel, and this was fantastic. Another scene slightly altered in the manga where Geto goes inside the building before the explosion happens, and again, Goso, man, these shots are giving me Christopher Nolan movie type vibe. It's just something you don't normally see in a typical shonen anime. Like, the cinematography is very prominent, but yeah, we don't get a lot of action. I mean, obviously, this is the first episode to a new flashback arc, but the little action sequences we did get, all of them looked smooth. The movement, the camera tracking, the special effects. I am very excited to see when we get to the actual fights later in this arc. This is not really a spoiler because, well, the episode does end with a man calling himself Fushiguro, and he's accepted the job to assassinate the star plasma vessel the girl Gojo and Geto were assigned to protect. So yeah, both characters are definitely gonna fight this Fushiguro in the future, and manga fans know how hard this fight's gonna go. It's gonna be even better in the anime because, well, not only will the fight come to life, of course, but the CEO of MAPPA pretty much confirmed that they're gonna extend the fight with this Fushiguro guy. But so far, the first episode left a phenomenal impression. The direction, the visuals, it actually exceeded my expectations, and now I have less doubts moving forward to seeing the rest of this amazing content get adapted in season 2.